So we've been joined by Gilbert Ibrahim, and it's just because we also need to have a lot more insight from the point of the economy and what is giving rise to perhaps perceived donor fatigue in our part of the world. Gilbert Ibrahim is an economist, and we thank you for your presence today. Now, I was on you.
Yeah.
Why would we have a country we have categorized a lower middle income country
yeah.
for which you look at the various variables and indicators, still gives us the inclination that we are what we were before.
Yeah.
You go to the countryside, there's still poverty.
Yeah.
As far if you look at governance, there's still the need to create the awareness for many people to be aware of what the state of governance is, how they can contribute and participate.
Yeah.
And we all know all these is the embodiment of what civil society does.
Yeah.
So why would countries, why would donors think, well, you're better off, you need to fend for yourself?
Okay. I think we can turn your question around to and see why would we Ghanaians, or why would Ghana not see if this is important, we need to put our own money in it, because even if they are not cutting now, eventually they would cut, they would move elsewhere, there will be other priorities coming up, So how do we ensure that we're able to mobilize enough funding, to support our development efforts? If you take countries like the US and etc., maybe initially they started with very huge government funding going to the not-for-profit sector. But increasingly you see private trusts, philanthropy, private philanthropic distance coming up. Bill and Melinda Gates, Warren Buffett, etc. They are stepping in and filling the gap within the US. If you look at the UK, outside UK government funding, they have the big lottery fund, which generates funding, that is then given to civil society organizations. You have an organization like Comic Relief that uses humor, it uses this to raise millions of pounds that it even gives to African organizations. So can we also begin to look at what are the possibilities within, so that if one day, the donor countries even get up and say, no, we're not giving you any more money, we are able to generate the resources needed to fund the very critical actions that you've just talked about.
Well, your submission just clearly give us indication that where can we get it, unless from the structures of the economy. If the economy is not right, then that can't be possible. If you take a look at what he just said, is it possible for us to say, as a continent, as various economies, as an economy like ours, we can generate enough to support civil society?
Yeah, as if you want to look at it from the angle of government funding it, that's where the challenges will come. Yes, government can provide a level of it, maybe the seed, but then we would need to have the corporate world, Ghana, to contribute to it more as a corporate social responsibility, identifying the critical role that civil society plays in shaping a lot of things in the country. You know that sometimes they articulate strongly issues that would promote the total well-being of the people, and the funding, they will not have it. And if you want to rely exclusively on government, the stress will be so much for government, especially a developing country when we have a lot of infrastructure still to go to develop. For government to set aside huge sums of money to support civil society activism is going to be a challenge for government. But government can contribute back. But then civil society, like the corporate world, mostly, can also contribute to them, and then there are other funds we can access worldwide that can also come in, and readily they will come. But then,
Mr. Barry, how does the corporate world contribute to civil society funding when we know, for example, just this very year or the last fiscal year, Ghana's cedi, the South African rand, have been the worst performing currencies on the continent.
That's right.
And currently, if you look at, our budget deficit, very huge. We have huge trade deficit also. And that doesn't bode well for making sure the various indicators and the structures of the economy tend to show up and or tend to support whatever relevant sectors we're talking about?
Yeah, these are challenges, and that's how you build an economy that will be resilient to adjust within shorter periods to recoup their investments. You see, when you look at it from the angle of the CD, it's because mostly we import most of our raw materials. That's why the impact of the drop in the CD is huge. But if we can expand industry into agro-base, where a larger chunk of the processing are done with domestic resources, the impact will not be much. That calls for an industrial growth that will use predominantly domestic ones. And then other companies that import, for example, if the toiletries or soap can take all caustic soda and everything within,
and not go to
China, the impact will be minimal. Then the profit margins will soar up, then they can contribute. And it's a pleasure for a company to put money to a fund for a civil society to pick it and achieve a major goal. It goes to their credit that they've contributed to, and that makes them socially responsible.
I know you want to contribute. It's very funny how he says that it's what you say for corporate organizations to contribute.
To contribute.
How would they do that? There's nothing enticing.
Well, there is
some level of enticement.
Yes, because we shouldn't see corporate contributions to the civil society as merely altruistic. It's also in their own interests, because we do have civil society actions that directly contribute to creating an enabling environment for private sector to work. If you look at the civil society organizations that are working on tax justice, ensuring that multinationals don't siphon money out of this thing, these are civil society actions that directly benefit the private sector in the country. We have our civil society actions working with other private sector business to ensure that, you know, the dumping of produce from other countries doesn't take place. If you recall the campaigns on rice and poultry,
there have been some civil society agencies that work on protectionism and some.
Exactly. So it's actually also in the private sector's interest to contribute to this. Now, when a private sector organization contributes to something, they want to see, look, when we get to our stakeholders or our shareholders, we need to be able to justify that for these CDs, this is the value we're getting. Now, what is happening currently is that there's this scattered investment. So company A goes to build one school in a community as corporate social responsibility. There's nothing about the teachers who would come there. There's nothing about the books. Another organization goes there, sinks a well, you know, in another community. But if we say you have these monies being put in a fund and utilized in a holistic way, in an integrated way, that ensures that, yes, you get the school for your money, but other complementary actions take place. Then you can, at the end of the day, tell your shareholders that for your money, 8,000 children are getting quality education. Not that you have built a school that can take 8,000 children.
Star Ghana, how do you work? You have a pool of, let's say, USAID, DFID, etc. They come together, they pool the resources. It's in one basket. You advertise a call. If you qualify based on the structures you have, etc. That benchmark is there. So if you go through, then you access. Is that not how you go?
Yes. Yes, we are a pooled fund. Danida, that's Denmark. USAID, DFID, that's UK, and the European Union have collectively, they put their money in one basket. And the fund or the basket is called Star Ghana.
Sir, why do you think there's donor fatigue, or as far as we're concerned, these contributions that had been made enormously over the decades to civil society, and especially for our part of the continent, to make sure perhaps there's vibrancy in those areas and we have proper structures in governance and the economy and etc. now drying up?
Now, if you want to look at the main things that causes the fatigue, I think majorly it would be because of huge or frequent occurrences of natural disasters, major ones. And then one, it could be as a result of budget constraint to the donors themselves. and the volume of requests, pressure put on the donors, among others. If you take these three variables, you see that when there are major natural disasters and they happen, the attention naturally of donors goes there. Then subsequently, if there are other pressing things that come, they run out. And you don't get the money forthcoming. That's one of the areas where the fatigue comes. For example, when you follow America in particular, when the Hurricane Katrina, all the donors went in and was immediately followed by Hurricane. Is it the
tsunami in Japan,
or wherever they call it? They realized that the second one did not get enough donation because they were fatigued. They ran out, and then so one, they do not have unlimited budgets. When they run out of cash, then the fatigue comes. Then also when there are a lot of demands unnecessarily, that stresses them, irritates, it also brings the fatigue. Then also when we have mismanaged, perceived or real of the fund, that you apply for it for a purpose and they follow up to see that it is not implemented exactly in that area, it also brings that kind of fatigue. And these are some of the stress that donors go through, and that produces that kind of fatigue.
But ultimately, why do we have these contributions over the years from the donor community to stimulate a lot more action in civil society in countries like ours over the years? Why have we seen all these contributions made?
Well, for a number of reasons. There is the one that says we want to contribute to a better, just world. There is the part that says instability in any part of the world affects them, So rather than the instability leading to boatloads of migrants trying to, go to their countries, why don't you create the conditions that will prevent these people from going? You have situations where bad governance has led to unrest, and unrest has spawned, terrorism, etc. So there are all kinds of reasons. There's also the contribution that prepares the grounds for their private sector to be able to come in, So we can't say it's all, again, as we say, altruistic. So there are all kinds of reasons. And also I was saying that if you look at the spike in funding for civil society organizations in Ghana, it occurred during the period of the structural adjustment. In the 80s when we started all the structural adjustment, then they said government should cut now spending. Now when government cuts, who steps in? So they said subcontract, NGOs to do the capacity building, the training. Then we started PAMSCAD. We needed NGOs to go in and help implement PAMSCAD. So at that point, it was a kind of instrumental funding. It wasn't empowering this thing. We want to fund civil society as an instrument to support the implementation of structural adjustment. But 20 years since our Fourth Republic, we are realizing that we need a strong civil society as a countervailing force to the states. Who raises the critical questions? Who convenes, spaces where citizens can be able to talk? It's civil society. And so it is in our interest, even as a country, to ensure that we have a strong and vibrant civil society. Yes, you raised the question, my brother raised the question about the perceptions of misuse, and therefore it kind of affects the giving. And I'm sure that when we start asking Ghanaians to see what we can fund our own civil society, people will ask the question, what have they been doing? So, of course, civil society also needs to shine the light on itself. That's right. And to say, what do we need to improve upon? First, to give confidence to people that the money will not be mismanaged. Secondly, that what you're doing is based on the issues articulated by citizens, and not that you sat in your bedroom somewhere and then thought that, it would be a very good idea to talk about FGM, so let's go and do it.
How do we say, tell perhaps the corporate world, if it is religious organizations we're talking to, that there's this very call to action, and there is that voluntary need to contribute towards a certain cause, not by default, not by compulsion, but because it is critical.
Yeah. You see, for the corporate world, they would donate to derive two satisfactions: altruistic, that he mentioned, and egoistic. To be part of a society that is creating a good society. So that means that if you look at it from both sides, altruistic and egoistic, you see that everybody will want to, because you feel fulfilled as a company, and your goodwill picks up. You are branded a good company in terms of goodwill, and that is also an asset. So you see, so they would definitely want to contribute to that. But that is where the issues are. Some companies here, even if they have to use the little of the profit instead of reinvesting it, would willingly put it in if the cost is just, and are sure that this fund can create this impact on the society, which would in future create an enabling environment, a very good atmosphere for business, then they would gladly contribute to it. But the activities of the civil society, sometimes I won't be surprised if they have a lot of money, and at the end of the year, they will not be able to dispense them. Because people who apply for it, you cannot see clearly the objective why they need the money. And if you give it out, definitely it will be mismanaged. Some will put a proposal very beautiful, attractive. You give them the money, implementation is a challenge. And so, but then if we will build this kind of funding and the activities of civil society, and we're able to measure the multiplier impact of it on the economy, then willingly, even companies that are stressed will contribute to this. And since we have very formal structured institutions like Star Ghana and other people, these funds can be properly put there and managed. If you look at this skill development fund, if you look at the way they manage it, you observe that it's not an area you can just walk in and pick it out. Before you
get access, you need to, just like Star Ghana, you need to
go through, meet some requirements.
Stringent, not just some.
No, but you see, they're going to skill development, so it's demand driven. So you must apply to a specific skill you want to develop. And not because you just sit there and think that you have to do this. And you go through a very rigorous process to get you through. But at the end of the day, they won't let you. They will follow up and make sure they achieve it. So that is where institutions like Star Ghana will have to come in strongly and make sure that whoever picks the fund, then they follow up and make sure that.
I think they do monitoring as well.
We do a lot of,
Okay. Now, why are you coming up with this very idea at this time? Is it because there's the realization following all those indications you've given us from the period of PAMSCAD, our activities in the early or the mid-80s to the 90s, etc., until now? Or it is also because now we need some complementary funding sources?
Well, for a number of reasons. One, as I said, if you look at the funding of former civil society organizations, you had the Rise and Voice Initiative, RAVI, which went. You had the Ghana Research and Advocacy Program, GRAP, which was also funded by donors. You have Star Ghana, which has been there for 5 years. It ends next year, So this cycle of donor funding for civil society is not going to continue ad infinitum. You have BUSAC, which supports private sector, initiatives, which is also donor funded. So we need to start looking at that. But the second part, apart from the possibility that the funds would dry up, is that we need to own our development. Star Ghana, before the fund was set up, had the donors had to agree where should the funding go. Currently, our funding is in 5 areas: education, health, oil and gas, access to justice, governance, and then we are funding Parliament and the media.
That's 8.
But Parliament and media are kind of cross-cutting. But these were priorities that were agreed with the donors. So it also reflected their priorities. How about if we had a fund that was fully Ghanaian-owned, Ghanaian-led, Ghanaian, we might then be able to see that instead of A, B, C, D, E, F, we want the money to go X, Y, Z. That's another area that we need to look at. So we need a national fund. We need a sustainable fund. So you can't continue counting on the possibility of somebody being generous to you. you have to start planning for the day when that generosity ends, or when you decide that, no, we don't want it, we want to use our own money. And we're saying that it is not just government funding. There are very innovative ways of doing that. UK has a big lottery fund. We have a National Lotteries Authority. Is it possible to use part of that? Is it possible for private sector organizations to contribute into a fund? Just as Bill Gates set up his fund, and he's encouraging his other billionaires to put in the money, that they can then give out to others.
The West and the other big societies we have, the more developed societies, and the various entities, personalities who contribute significantly to our part of the world and contribute to civil society action, what drives them beyond the perhaps ownership of corporate social responsibility and perhaps also, well, the need to create a better world?
If you look at most of them are very successful people in business and
yes.
politics.
Sometimes you read about them and they contribute billions.
Yeah.
Well, the gentleman has, let's say, 60 billion or let's say 20 billion, can contribute about 1 billion in a year.
More.
You see, they want to just give back to society.
Just give back?
Yeah.
1 billion?
Yes. Because they have, even if they don't even have money, but it's satisfying. It gives them that kind of pleasure to give back to society, to make life relevant to somebody somewhere far away from there. And then knowing that Africa is poverty is very high, and you believe that if I give this 1 billion out, I can restore hope in some hopeless situation in an African home. Of course, and when you see it, you'll be glad. And remember, most of them went through a lot to build their image and to be successful in their area. So it's just to give back to society. And I think that if in our training and upbringing, we are made to value the essence of giving back.
You mean the West? Or
Not
us?
like
Even us?
Even us.
Where? Because we don't give.
No, yeah, but that
So
is why I'm looking at how civil society, our courses in the schools from the basic through to the university, where you will be exposed to the need to give back, so that as somebody who finished basic education will be yearning to give back. You don't have the money, but you can walk to a facility and render a service free. It's giving back. And that's what they do. Even within their grading system, sometimes there's a service you render from their middle school to high school, and the grade is part of the grading, so it's put in them. It's in them.
For us, you have to chew and work for everything in school. So don't cite that thing as an example.
But I think in terms of giving,
do we have it in us? We do. As a society, as a continent.
We do, because even if you go to your church or you go to instance, people give. And if you look at the...
But it's because they've been conscientized in a certain
way.
No,
so civil society, how do you go and conscientize somebody not to give to give to a certain pool of fund?
I think one is for us to demonstrate the need, that, and also to demonstrate that even if you give 1 pesewa, it can contribute to something. Because of the levels of poverty, people might say, oh, I mean, I don't have enough to give. My 1 cedi wouldn't do anything. Forgetting that 1 cedi from different people
of them
would generate. Others are not able to give because the structures simply don't exist, to enable them to give. So if you got up today, your boss said, oh, get this bonus of 10,000 Ghana cedis, and you said, okay, I want to give 2,000 out of that to support this thing, you would struggle. Beyond your church going to give to the church or something, you will struggle to where to put it.
So now you feel we have the platform. Where?
We need to.
Which platform?
Well, we don't have a platform yet. Yeah. That is the conversation we need to have as a country. What do we want, and how do we set up the systems and processes that would enable us to gather this, and the accountability.
Now we'll talk about the issue after accountability. It's a big issue. That one we have to. Now, for the two of you, I have to start with you. If you look at the spectrum of our society, where are you going to, one, convince, persuade, lobby, or tell people that, well, from these sectors, or if it's religion, corporate, education, where are you going to tell people to elicit that sort of support, to contribute to a significant cause or causes?
Is it a cause that will promote welfare in terms of health, poverty, or just education to educate people?
So civil society. I mean, in terms of where do you go and make the appeal? So
where?
Which sectors do you persuade? Apart from, well, we've identified the corporate world. Are we going to talk about religious bodies? In what form? Educational institutions in what form? Chieftaincy in what form? Because we have a broad spectrum of the society, which adequately can be segmented for us to say these, after we segment them, we can target and adequately also we can get some pool of resources of funding from them.
You see, before you would even approach people to contribute this before, then the structures and the institutions that would run these advocacy groups need to be very clear, and everybody knows that these groups, when they get it, will be used profitably. Then the traditional councils, some are rich, they can contribute to a pool. Then the churches can do. Some churches do. They have a pool that they use to support some of these groups. And then and if you observe that, we love to, when we go to the churches and the mosques, we generously dole out the bills in the churches because we believe that this is where God is, and when we put it there, sometimes you don't give it because of what you will get back, but because it can build somebody's life, and you believe in the ministry to meet a need. So in the same way, if there is one outside the church that you believe that if you put 1,000, 2,000 into it, it will make life bearable and comfortable for a section of the community, you will gladly do it. There's so much joy in giving. And there are a lot of people who want to give. How come the church is able to pull it out, but civil society is not able to pull it out? That means it is there. If you give them a good reason why they can contribute to something, you'll get a lot of people come into it. And today, even if you move right now, you want to give money to any group, orphanage possibly will come. But sometimes you also hear abuses within the orphanage, and then it's like, is it worth it? But if you know that this orphanage, you put it there, and this is the result that will come, definitely you always get there. And I see a lot of groups, including multimedia, you do a lot of things for the homeless, and you manage it yourself. Imagine you can get another group that can equally manage it like you do. You just relax and give them the money to do what they can do. Where do you go into it yourself annually? That you go out and cook and feed people on the street.
That's a very good point. A very, very good point. So where do we pull the resources from?
I think there are various sources, some of which my brother has mentioned. The private sector provides a good basis to go and demonstrate that it's in your own interest to support the actions that civil society is undertaking, whether it's in the conducive environment or just providing facilities, etc. We have rich individuals too who want to give. And in the West, increasingly, you have families setting up a trust. So in memory either of somebody within the family who has died or the head of the family, and etc. And I remember there was a couple that lost their baby, in one of the hospitals here, and they decided to set up a fund to create awareness.
In Ghana?
In Ghana here, yes. Yes. They decided, I don't know how much has gone into that fund, but there was a whole story about it. I think they were unhappy about the circumstances under which the woman lost the baby, and they decided to set up a fund. So individuals might be willing to contribute. We've talked about agencies like the national lotteries that could,
That's through the state.
That's through the state, And we also have just individuals like you and I who might want to say, okay, every month I want to give 1 city, either through whatever means and etc.
If we have to look at the anthropology side of it, as a society, and I'm talking about the African society, we're moved by what we see. And sometimes the persuasive levels before we give need to be very high or reach a certain crescendo. And I'm taking my cue from what happens in the churches or with the churches. Your spirit needs to be moved, hyped up to a certain level before you give. And also it's because you see some physicality to what needs to be given. So is it not perhaps the psyche of the society or perhaps the fabric of the society that is angled towards that, and so makes it difficult for normal civil society to pool resources together to support initiatives, so to speak? Because I'm finding it very difficult to say, well, somebody gives just for a cause and not tied to anything at all.
We had a National Trust Fund. I don't know if it's still working. But the National Trust Fund...
Well, Ghana, a lot of things are there.
Yeah, but the National Trust Fund was set up with some funding from the state and other corporate business. And the Trust Fund annually then makes grants to various organizations. I think it was more skewed towards charitable giving, you know. And it's easier to raise money to support emergencies. So flooding in the north, I mean, when there was that flood a few years back, you had people donating not just in cash. People brought used clothing and etc. There's a fire outbreak somewhere. People come. So it's easier to donate or to set up a fund for such emergencies. I think it is the unseen part of civil society's actions, holding government accountable, asking questions of the private sector. Why is it that, you know, our mobile networks have been off since yesterday? You know, who asks those questions? Who mobilizes citizens to ask those questions? Those ones, it's more difficult to sell. If I came to you and I said, oh, I want to set up a fund to hold government accountable, it doesn't really resonate with you as much as if I said, you know, there are a group of orphans or Kaya I want to set up a fund for. So I think that it depends on how we package the message, you know, that would be used to sell the idea.
And then sometimes if you want to contribute to a worthy cause, the lifestyle of the activists too. Sometimes you see you got the fund and you go for V8 and you are running around there. Sometimes you go after. But then if Ghanaians or Africans want to link giving to a reward, so far as you can perceive it. That's why it's that huge in the church. But then, if you look at social psychologists, they believe that there's this kind of enmity between the poor and the rich. Psychologically, the rich think they are lazy. That's why they are poor. And the poor thinks that they are thieves. Because if you don't steal, you can't make the money. That's why an armed robber can just shoot a rich man without feeling bad. That's the social psychological issue. And pick what he wants. After all, he stole it himself. But then, if civil society comes and they make life comfortable, and these contributions can put somebody to school to get somewhere, you see that the crime rate and that enmity, understanding bills, would reduce so marginal in the future, medium to long. It creates a very good society. That the same people contributing, you will not see that this is what your money has done to society, but that is the impact it will come. But usually want to see the direct returns from our giving. If you give, some people go to church and they give and then they complain. I've been giving, condition is not changing because it was told that when you give, God will give it back to you. But sometimes it's good to just have the idea to give, even if you don't get anything in return. You should be glad and be happy about it. But then you see, the Ghanaian society, and let me put it, since he's here, to use their good office, I just heard is their Star Ghana will be ending next year, and put their office together, rally other such groups together, put pressure on government for such funds to be there. For example, NADMO, they see that disaster hits, they go. Let's say a whole year or more, no disaster. What happens to NADMO fund? You see, this is where some of them can channel to a bigger platform for a period, and then some of the returns from the oil heritage fund, possibly, if they can look into it, and part goes to the. But then the management of the fund, that's another thing. In Ghana, we always have problems.
We'll talk about management. Don't take the wind out of the sails. So if you look at for Star Ghana, what quantum of funding was available, or did you pool to undertake the works that you, let's say, over the last 2 years, each year, averagely?
Well, for the 5 years, we have committed a total of $36 million.
$36 million dollars.
Yes.
Okay. In Ghana, can you pull those resources together? Let's say we're talking. Let's say we want to start with $25 million.
Okay.
Can we pull those resources locally?
I think we can, and again, it depends on how it's done.
Annually. You're talking about annually?
No. The 36. Well, that's for
the five spread over the 5 years.
Yes.
Dollars.
Yes, dollars, US.
And going by current rates now, that's times 3.
That's times 3, yeah.
Or was not times 3 then, but now it's times 3.
But now it's times 3, yes. I think, it's not just a question of we are able to mobilize 36 at once. But you might have an investment that's, or a donation, a seed money that can be invested. And then out of that, you are able to generate, returns that you then use. So the seed capital itself is there, but it's the whatever you are able to generate from the investment that enables you to be able to fund this. So I think it is possible. I think it is necessary, and I think people are willing to do it. What needs to be done, and which you said we'll be coming to, is ensuring that we have a national conversation in which everybody realizes that need. We have national structures and institutions that everybody has confidence in and that they can see, well, if we give it here, we know that it wouldn't fly out of the window.
Okay, economists, now let's come to the current state in which we are.
That's right.
There's some level of distrust in the African society, in the Ghanaian society, because of also a distrust for the political elite who tend to manage governance and ultimately manage the state of the economy. And this ultimately has a bearing on citizenship, their livelihoods, and progression.
That's right.
Okay. Can the state and perception that people have of the citizen or of governance and the governance structures and the way governance is undertaken tend to influence their trust for how some of these activities will be managed? Because now we're digressing into the issue of the management before we wrap up.
Yeah, you see, to manage these funds well, we need to completely take this politics and winner take all completely out.
Well, this is civil society, so there's no political game here.
No, but you are talking about the fund.
Yes.
And if it's coming from government, it needs to be managed. And you and I know winner takes all. Whoever is in power will want to put his people to manage the fund. Honestly. I mean, we've had health insurance is not supposed to be politicized. There's a fund, a proportion of that goes there. But we have challenges that they are not even paid. So where's the money? Is it like people don't pay? Then we have Get Fund, we have other funds. And Get Fund, for example, there are a lot of projects that are standing halfway. But the sources of contribution to the fund has run over the years. So where is the money to complete those? So where is the justification that this other fund too, managed by government, can be used for specific purpose? And that's where the problem comes in. That's why I am saying that we should get people professionally who can manage them and give them the rudiments and possibly a very good structure to
well,
dispense.
Mr. Brian, I hope you're not talking with a sense that perhaps pooling of these resources necessarily will be coming from government.
No,
but of course,
pooling can come from.
There needs to be some level of policy action.
He started by saying that you can start with a seed money and investment, then subsequently it comes through. But if you start it, and whoever manages it doesn't work, the subsequent one won't flow through.
I get your point.
And you'll be stretched. And they are not politicians in their area, but they're managing it cool. If you go to, I read around, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just started reading around security skill development fund. And I was looking at the board. You see, they are not politicians. These are successful people in the corporate world. And they know what funding and the processes you go through to get the fund. And that's why it is one of the funds that's a bit of, how can Ghanaians manage SDF perfectly and another batch of Ghanaians cannot manage Get Fund and Health Insurance Fund? You get one. So if this fund will be created, then it is obvious that the management will be prudent and it will achieve the purpose for which it is there. You just don't dole it out to somebody for political reasons. You don't give it to anybody because you put up a good proposal, but you give it to people who will get it to where it is supposed to go. And you can monitor, evaluate, and see the result. And you see the entire civil society contributing to the fund. And that's why if those donors out there, if they don't manage it well, do you think other people will contribute to them?
Mr. Tanko, I've worked for a number of some of these organizations who draw their funding from elsewhere. Before you came in and you made everything so stringent and all. But still, there's the monitoring. For example, if a U.S. government is giving some level of assistance through the USAID, the UK government should defer it. And let's say even the pool center is Star Ghana. There's still some level of benchmarks that is respected.
That's right.
And is it because, well, they are white people or Western and that kind of stereotyping?
I think
and so psychologically we tend to gravitate.
Irrespective of the color of your skin, if you are put
not necessarily.
No, I know, but if you are put in a situation where
I mean,
there are no
black
systems,
person from America.
So I say, if you are put in a system where, in a situation where there are no systems, there are no checks, even angels will get corrupted.
Well, there are supposed to be checks in the books.
Exactly. So I think that right from the beginning, if you have in place a system that ensures that there is accountability, there is reporting, etc. Last year alone, Star Ghana, we had 4 different evaluations, external reviews, not to talk about the financial audits. And we cascade down that to our grant partners, those who receive money from us. We send auditors, we send quality assurance, we go out ourselves to go and monitor. So if you have those systems, at least you're able to reduce to the barest minimum the possibility of this thing. And I think people have a right in saying that, there's a possibility of mismanagement. Some NGOs haven't done themselves any good in the way they've carried themselves, in the kind of things that they have done. And now people say that one monkey spoils all monkeys, So yes, there's room or there's a basis for that kind of skepticism. But we can only address that by ensuring that we set up and implement the necessary systems. Not to say because 1 or 2 NGOs misapplied funds, it means we should never fund civil society organizations.
In the West, donor funding, even if it's by civil society, somehow has some level of state regulation. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation doesn't just repatriate $100 billion dollars out of the United States into the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, etc. Just it will be monitored. You need express approvals and all that. Well, they are known for it. They are respected. But their systems work.
That's right.
How do we make sure that ours is not subject to some level of abuse, as we already have some level of abuse in existence?
You see, that is possible. We have legal frameworks.
You mean it will happen, or it is possible?
It is very possible to do it, but that would mean that you look beyond cronies and get technical people.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Star Ghana is managed by Ghanaians.
No, I do understand all that. You're Ghanaian, so I do understand. But the point is that, you see, we have a certain culture of managing what is ours and well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You see, that's very possible where you get people trusted to live. Maybe you don't appoint people who run with you to do the politicking and issues, but you look for people who have track record of managing institutions well, and then put them on this. Sometimes you might not get them called to sit and manage them. You put them within the board that they will check strongly and ensure that the right thing is done. If it's not done, they throw it back to you, take it back to. There are some groups that have a lot of fund that they are not able to, people are not able to access. The fund is there, but they can't access it because somebody wants to be sure that it's used for that purpose, and they wouldn't bend the rule.
So the fund will be there until it goes back.
It goes back in this country.
There are some funds that,
especially
where there's a need for counterpart funding.
Yeah.
You know.
And we are not able to assess them.
Okay, so now, where do we take the discussion next? We're just beginning the discussion. So
Yes.
we have to start persuading, conscientizing, and doing a lot more lobbying.
Yes, I
to
think
drive home
yes.
that there's the need to fund our own.
This is
We
a
can't
need-
always be depending on cramps.
Exactly.
And I think another issue that if the civil society will be relevant to this community, they should completely pull out from making political utterances. Because whether we like it or not, a political party will be in power. And you should be careful what you say because you need to win the trust of the people.
Well, I do get your point, Mr. Ibrahim.
But if you are not
but
that
Mr. Tanko, particularly when we have civil societies that deal with governance, and I know it's one of the areas that you give funding to.
No.
Definitely we need to.
You
or
can be
speak on the
political
sidelines.
without being partisan.
Thank you, sir. I'm looking at
I see this is a very broad topic because even as I'm about to end, I still have a lot more questions to ask.
Yeah.
So it means that we have to continue the discussion, and civil society also will need to drive this whole effort, and the media, I'm sure, would also help drive the effort as well. Perhaps maybe your last year, you need to focus on that as well.
Okay.
Then we'll see how it goes.
Advice well taken.
Okay.
And lobby strongly so that you get it at the
Okay,
national
so
level.
we have had in the studio Ibrahim Tanko Amido. He's the program manager for Star Ghana. Thanks for joining me this morning.
too.
Another Ibrahim goes by the first name Gilbert. He's an economist, Gilbert Ibrahim. Thanks for joining me as well. He's also a part-time lecturer as well. And we hope to have you gentlemen. We'll discuss a lot more issues of donor funding and how we can pool resources locally to make sure, of course, devoid of those tendencies that we tend to exhibit as a people.